Alright guys, what's up? Ready here doing work. Taking apart the brakes so we can go ahead and remove the upper, lower control arms, the knuckle. Woo! We already did the other side. Got everything, like the process down packed, so I can show you like a good way and not the crappy way. So let's do it. The first thing you want to do, remove this lower bolt on the caliper so you can swing the caliper up, take your brake pads out, put that to the side, take the caliper off, and kind of just lay it on something. Like for example, I'm probably going to lay it on the wheel. Take your rotor off, and then you're going to start removing stuff. So on this side I already removed the sway bar end links on both sides. And then we'll go from there. Alright, so we're removing the castle nuts now. The cotter pins are surprisingly easy. I've dealt with cotter pins in other cars and they're a nightmare, but they're not too difficult on this car. The castle nuts, again, were not too difficult either. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. I can finish talking. Okay. So, did I remove? I did remove this, but at the end I didn't need to. Okay. So basically, so now we have pretty much everything loose, right? So there are no nuts holding the knuckle to the tie rod end to the upper or lower control arm. But what we're gonna do how we did it on the other side. So we're basically gonna remove the entire upper, lower, and knuckle out in one shot, with leaving the shock in place, right? So basically,
no, take the other thing out first.
Let's take this out first, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the tie rod end on the other side was a pain in the butt. This side, it looks like it might be the same thing, but luckily I have a pickle fork, so and I didn't know I had that until like a couple minutes before we took it off. But that pickle fork helps so much because it just helps separate the tie rod end from the knuckle. So yeah, so let's do it. Alright, so this is the pickle fork basically. So you basically wedge it in between. Alright, get a hammer. So you can get it in. Come on. The other one went in. There we go. And that way, use it to help you separate the tie rod from the knuckle. And again, this has been the most difficult part of the entire disassembly. And I'm beating this up because I have a new tie rod end going in place of these. So got it done. Alright, that's the most difficult part.
Well, for us.
Yeah. So now what I'm going to do is that, since I don't want to mess where the locking nut is, I'm just going to go ahead and put the new tie rod end in, so I don't lose that position there. Yeah, so here's the new one up top, and you can see it's kind of longer. There's an extended tie rod. I think I got these at Super Miata. It's been a while. I'll put the link down below, but these are the ones that Super Miata sells. So yeah, and they come with the castle nut and their own cotter pin as well, so no need to reuse the old ones. Alright, so now that we have tie rod out of the way, the lower bolt that holds the shock undone, so the shock is free down low. Now we're going to work this top of bolt first, which is a long one on the upper control arm. So we're good there. And a heads up, this is why you have to undo your sway bar, because the two bolts that hold the two bolts that hold the bracket of the sway bar up here get in the way of you pulling out this super long bolt. So shit. There we go. It's that long ass bolt. Make sure you keep everything together. All the washers and nuts, because you are reusing this stuff. So next up are the two bolts on here on the lower control arm, which are part of the alignment, right? So when you're loosening these things are gonna move. You're gonna see them move like a lot, like the whole thing. You're gonna see move around like this, and that's because, you know, as you're turning it, you know, it's basically changing the alignment. So obviously once we do all of this, the alignment's gonna have to be redone, but that's fine. It's all part of the process. There we go. Got it. Nailed it. Okay. Okay, we're almost there. This is quite, honestly, I thought this was going to be more daunting than what it was. And it's really just you just gotta take your time. That's all it is. That's all it is. Just take your time. It's literally just removing bolts. I mean, that's it. Some angles suck, but others aren't so bad. And at the end of the day, it's not too bad. And you know what helps is this beautiful weather right now. I haven't even started sweating yet. I mean, look, my shirt is dry for the most part. And it's probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We started at 10:30-ish, and the weather has just been freaking beautiful. Windy, it's cool. Woo! I love it. It just goes to show how much weather can play a role in just being comfortable and just getting stuff done. So yeah, I'm excited to get this done. Okay, so there's that. So now we have that one last bolt back there. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put the bushings on the new control arms. These are the energy suspension. They are 11.3105s. And I got the red ones just because they're red. Even though they're only listed for 90 the NA generation of the Miata, I have reassurances from the internet Miata people that they'll work on NAs and MBs. So let's do this. So one of the cool things about the energy suspension kits is that they come with a diagram, right? The upper control arm, the lower control arm, and they give you the number of each bushing and where they go, right? So how can you tell what is what? Well, each bushing is numbered.
Can't see that. There we go.
So yeah, so you just find the number. Just make sure you're dealing with the front of the car as shown in the diagram. So you put the correct bushing in the right place, and then lube them up, put them on, and you're good to go. So that's what we're gonna do now. So we're gonna go ahead and install the lower control arm. Pretty simple, pretty much the reverse of what you did. Take it out. Then you want to take your alignment bolts, and they're gonna go from the front to the back. You're gonna have like this weird line part is gonna be aiming towards the back of the car, the little line thing. Alright, so now that we have the lower control arm in, I'm going to go ahead and put the lower ball joint. This is new, so might as well replace everything while you're replacing all of this. It only makes sense to start with fresh stuff. You will need to take out from the OEM lower control arm the bolt that holds that. To use the OEM mounting points, I'm going to use the innermost hole here. And again, this bolt you're going to take from the OEM lower control arm. So the reason why we're going with the OEM point is because on the other side, when we put it together, even though this is an extended tie rod end, I couldn't get the wheel like straight without having the tie rod end almost completely off, so I didn't feel comfortable with that, and that was on the middle hole. So I decided to just go with the OEM point, and then we'll just go from there. In the future we'll replace the entire tie rod with something longer, maybe the SPL ones or some shit like that, but just to give you guys heads up on that. So now we're going to go ahead and put the upper control arm in. Okay, so MR.TwoSix is going to go ahead and put the upper control arm in. Since we left the shock in, obviously you slide it through the hole. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do, now that we got the lower control arm in, upper control arm in, is actually, I'm going to fiddle with the camber adjustment up here. So I'm just going to put it all the way in, like OEM location. So the idea is that hopefully there's very little camber that's coming from the control arms themselves. And then again, we're going to get an alignment, so I'm not too worried about that right now. But I just want to get it situated, you know, so everything is in like a straight place, right? Alright, so here we have the super knuckle. So we're going to go ahead and get this bad boy on. Luckily, the Destroyer die upper control arms comes with the the bushing, the new ball joint I mean, and this nut. So and then while we have that, we're gonna go ahead and put the shock in place, so that way when we go to put the tie rod end, you know, pretty much everything's together. Alright, so we got the castle nut on back here, and then the cotter pin. You just have to be careful. This will be easier with two people. Make sure your steering wheel is straight when you're putting your tie rod ends into the knuckle. That's probably the most time consuming part of this whole install. And any one thing is just that, because there's a lot of, you know, trial and error, you know, putting in, no, this looks a little bit like it's turned in, okay, take it out, undo it, you know, it's a lot of trial and error. So with two people, it'll definitely be a lot easier. So thank you to MR.TwoSix for making my life a lot easier. Alright, so now that we have everything tightened down, we got our grease. We're going to grease up the spindle here, so we could go ahead and put on the new hub and bearing. So let's grease it up, lube it up. And then on the hub, on the bearing as well, on the inside here. The one thing that the knuckle doesn't come with, which I wish it did, is the spindle nut. So my local Miata chat saved my ass. Somebody had some, so I was able to get that. AutoZone, Napa didn't have it in stock. It would have to be ordered. Rock Auto has them, but I didn't know I needed them because I thought that either the new hubs came with them or the knuckles came with them. So neither did, but I was able to source them locally, so thank God for that. So you need this, and then also I'll have to get the caps for it as well, but this is important. Alright guys, so that's it. We finished it. Now I just need to go get an alignment. But just right now it looks lower than where it was with the OE parts. So we'll see if we can even drive this home. See you in the next video. So clearly can't drive like that. I mean, the rim, literally the lip of the rim is at fender level. That's nuts. That's without changing the height of the shocks. Nothing. Nothing. That's all just the upper and lower control arm and the knuckle. Damn.
Yes, we're not.
Alright guys, so first things first, what the hell happened to my face? I shaved it off. I do it once a year, but it had to come off. It's nice and cool right now. It feels good. The water touches my face. Feels good. So the weather is like in the 70s right now. It's beautiful. So adjusting the e-brake, and then we're raising up the front end of the car. So we already did the other side, which was giving us issues last weekend. So what I did is I marked the shock, right? And I'm gonna do 20 turns, full turns, and then get where I'm to the same position where I'm at on the other side. So that's what we're gonna do now. This is where we're at, about 1.5 inches. This is what we're raising the car. So the knuckles drop the car about 1 inch as it is by themselves. So that would bring me back up to where I was prior to all this being replaced. Plus I wanted to raise it prior to that anyway, so this gives me about another extra, I mean it's not much, 1/2 inch, no, not 1/4 inch. So let's get it all together. It's time to see where we're at. Moment of truth.
Moment of truth.
It's the moment of truth, part 2. Alright, so we ran into an issue that nobody's talked about. I haven't seen anything about it anywhere. So what happened is that the bolts, the 2 bolts that hold the brake caliper to the knuckle, they're too long. So what ends up happening, these are the factory bolts, so what ends up happening is that like 1/4 inch ends up sticking out past the caliper, and actually rubs on the inside part of the rotor. How did we figure this out? Couldn't get the car to move. I could get the back wheels to spin and I could peel out forward and reverse, but couldn't get the car to move. So we did everything we could to the back, rooted out the back. It wasn't the back, so put the car up on the front, and we couldn't turn the wheels at all. So I noticed that those bolts were, they were literally touching the back of the rotor. So what we ended up doing is we went to AutoZone and we got some new bolts. These are M10 1.25 by 30 millimeter, and this sits flush with the caliper, so it's literally the perfect size. So I'm just replacing that. We already did the other side. Now the entire assembly spins freely, so we're gonna do this side. Switch out those bolts, push out some red thread locker, and we're good. See, so that's the bolt right there. It's literally touching the rotor, and that's just the OEM bolt. What I'm thinking is that maybe the knuckle is a little bit thinner here than the stock knuckle, so that's why there's more of the bolt hanging out. So again, just picked up some new parts to replace them, and hopefully we'll be good to go. We'll see. Alright, so before, what was happening was since those bolts were hitting the back of the rotor, it was kind of putting the rotor at like an awkward angle once the car was on the ground. So you literally couldn't move the front. You couldn't even do this. That's how stuck it was. But now, after changing those bolts, that sound is, from the brake pads and the rotors. We're pretty good. So hopefully that covers the issue, and we can go have fun. Alright guys, so that's it.
We're done.
We're done. this is as high as the shocks go in the front, so it's gonna have to ride it like that and take it for a drive tonight. See how it feels, and we'll go from there. Definitely gonna need an alignment, so.
Alignment.
But yeah, time to have fun now.
Like and subscribe. Don't forget to like and subscribe.